Sunday marks 40 years since 900 Americans died in the jungles of Central America in what became known as the Jonestown Massacre. We want to warn you, some of what you're about to see is very graphic. It's important. Jim Jones, the leader of an obscure cult called the People's Temple, brought 900 of his followers from San Francisco, where he was closely tied to many people in the Democratic political establishment, to Jonestown, Guyana. A maverick Democratic congressman named Leo Ryan, his staff, and some reporters, including a team from NBC News, went to Jonestown to investigate reports that people were being held there against their will. The congressman's young attorney, Jackie Speier, interviewed some of those who wanted to go home.
Now, do I both understand you to say that you both want to leave Jonestown on this date, November 18, 1978?
Yeah.
And my name is Jackie Speier, and I'm an attorney on the staff of Congressman Leo Ryan, U.S. government. What is your pleasure? What is your wish today? To go back home. And where is home? U.S.
On November 18, 1978, the delegation, including 15 defectors, were trying to leave the country when they were ambushed on the tarmac by Jim Jones' hit team. Congressman Ryan and 4 others, including NBC correspondent Don Harris, cameraman Bob Brown, were killed. Another member of the NBC team, Steve Sung, was badly injured. Speier was shot 5 times at point-blank range and was laying bleeding on the tarmac overnight until she was rescued and medevaced out the next day. Meanwhile, back in the encampment, Jim Jones had orchestrated the mass killing of 900 of his followers, instructing them to drink Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. Infants were injected with the poison. Adults who refused were forced fed or shot. Joining me now is Congresswoman Jackie Speier, who now serves on the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. She's written about Jonestown and other very dramatic events in her consequential life in an extraordinary new book, Undaunted, Surviving Jonestown, Summoning Courage, and Fighting Back. Congresswoman, I get emotional just talking to you about this. We talked quite a while earlier today. Think back 40 years. You were suspicious. Leo Ryan was suspicious. You had so many premonitions. You wrote a letter to your parents saying that if something happened to you, that you were sustained by the love that they had bred you with, and with a P.S. saying that there was an insurance policy.
$1,000 at the credit union, a life insurance policy.
Congressional credit union.
I had premonitions, but I was also a young professional staff member who was a woman in Congress. That was new, and there was another staff member from the committee that was going, and I thought if I didn't go, I would be setting women back. And so I made the trip, even though my instincts told me that it was dangerous.
And you told me about it the night before this all happened. You were already hearing from people. In fact, Don Harris, our cameraman, tell me what he did as you were listening to Jim Jones. And Jim Jones was being applauded, wildly applauded by the crowd, and something seemed off.
Well, the commotion was unreal, and Don was walking around the perimeter of the pavilion smoking a cigarette, and one of the members of the temple slipped him a note with the names of 2 people with the words, we want to get out.
And that's Jim Jones there with the sunglasses. He was widely known in San Francisco, and a lot of members of Congress and others, the State Department, supported him, were ignoring the reality of what was going on.
There's a lot of, fingers that can be pointed to lots of different people. Certainly the establishment in San Francisco looked the other way because it was, quote, a church, but there was all kinds of illegal activity going on. There was physical abuse, sexual abuse, taking of Social Security checks, gun running, and then, again, the State Department, I think, violated its responsibility to protect American citizens abroad. It did not warn, it did not protect, and it did not investigate.
Tell me what happened when you got to the tarmac.
When we got to the tarmac, I was loading passengers onto each of the planes.
These were defectors.
These were all defectors leaving, and there were members of the press obviously still on the trip with us. And then a tractor trailer, unbeknownst to us, followed behind us, and then jumped off the tractor trailer and started shooting. And many of us were shot.
First, the congressman you saw go down.
First he got shot, and then I saw him go down. And then I ran to the side of the plane and tried to hide behind the wheel and pretended that I was dead. Don Harris was shot and killed, and so was Bob Brown. And
in fact, Bob Brown shot these pictures photographed these pictures, this video, and the camera was still rolling when he was
shot and killed. So it was, waiting for the gunshots to stop. But meanwhile, I got hit and shot 5 times, and all of a sudden I looked down at my body, and my bone is coming out of my arm, and there's a huge hole in my leg the size of a football. And the trauma obviously sets in, and the shock. But your brain does kind of a funny thing. It just sort of ignores the one side of your body that was so badly wounded. But I thought I was dying, and I said the act of contrition and waited for the lights to go out.
How did you survive that night in the jungle on the tarmac with no medical aid?
Well, Bob Flick, who was the producer at NBC, would come out from the bar that was nearby that most of the survivors were staying at, and I was in a tent at that point in time, and he would bring Guyanese rum, 150 proof, and would give me a couple of swigs, and literally that's how I got through the night.
And you finally got medevaced out. A lot of surgeries.
Over 10 surgeries. They thought they were going to have to amputate my arm or my leg because I had gas gangrene so bad.
You write, though, that even this was not the worst thing that happened in your life.
No, actually, I had, at that point in my life, thought, well, everyone gets their fair share of grief. As it turned out, 14 years later, my husband was in an automobile accident by a driver who had no brakes, and I was pregnant with our second child, and we had a 5.5-year-old son. And he was the big breadwinner, so I was 3 months from personal bankruptcy, so it was very tough.
Well, Jackie Speier, every time I see you and see what you do, and I keep learning more about what you've been through, and you still have bullets in your body. One was dug out and was used as evidence to convict Larry Layton. Thank you very much for your courage. 10 years in Congress and still counting.
Thank you.
The book is Undaunted, as are you.
Thank you.